Hello, I'm Ed Rabyd, otherwise known as the Rabyd Atheist, a former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. You're free to like or dislike the video as you see fit, so feel free to hit those buttons. Free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the channel and get your notification bell set so you can receive new content as it is released. Videos tend to be uploaded Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but I've been a little bit slacking on the Wednesday video, but more on that in a moment. You're also free to share those videos wherever you think it's possible. So thank you for doing all that. As I stated just briefly ago, I feel bad about not getting the Life of Christ videos out because it's one of my pet projects and I do want to continue on with it. It's actually been quite enlightening for me. It's just Father's Day week. I don't know what holidays are celebrated around the world, but here in the United States, we set usually the third weekend in June as Father's Day. And the problem with Father's Day for me is my father died on October 5th, 1994. And so it's, I think, 26 Father's Days that I haven't had my dad around. And I think I've spoken to my father before, but one of the great revelations you have when you realize your faith is nonsense is a lot of the things that you used to believe, just aren't true. I'm not going to ever see my father again. And that last hug right before I left for seminary, to travel back to seminary, that he gave me, and then a couple days later I got the phone call that he had died. Yeah, that's not something I want to ever give up, that feeling of being hugged by my father. I told him, I love you, if you need anything, just let me know and I'll help. That was my last conversation with my dad. My dad, if there is such a thing as a godly man, he was one of them. But I think my dad was a good man simply because that's who he was. He was always a good guy. I think religion just kind of gave him a focal point. So from a personal standpoint this week, the week leading up to Father's Day is very bittersweet. I am very proud as a father of all three of my children. I am proud of my son-in-law and my daughter-in-law. They're great people too. I'm proud of all my grandkids. And so that part of my life is gone, is going forward, and it's great. But the part where I look at my dad and my memories of my dad, it can kind of be sad and depressing. Yesterday, me and my mother went to my dad's graveside, and we go down there and make sure it's clean, and we change out the permanent flowers because they still fade in the sun and everything, and try to make it look nice. And we talk about Dad going down, and we talk about Dad coming home. And it's a good moment for me and Mom, but it's also a sad moment. And my mother's still a person of faith, so there's kind of a distance there. There's things we don't talk about anymore. And this is kind of a deconversion issue, which is why I'm talking about it. I'm not going to be the one that changes my mother's or anybody else's faith. They're going to have to do that on their own. It's big. I think I've lost my faith mostly because I knew too much. I kept studying stuff, and you just know too much, and you realize that there's no more truth to this than the Havamal or the Odyssey or the Iliad. And there's some stuff there that might be true, but the vast majority of it is mythology. And when you come to that realization, you realize that you should have been spending your time on a lot of other things. That said, I have to say that Christianity made my father a decent man. I think his big thing was, love your neighbor as yourself, and he tried to live that the best he could, and I'm proud of him for that. I think my family has been robbed by his absence, and I think knowing my grandchildren the way I do, and even my son-in-law, my daughter-in-law, and all the kids. My father would have been very loving of all of them, and that's just the way he was. So I wanted to salute my dad before Father's Day arrived, and so I thank you for allowing me that time. But it also kind of explains my mood this week, which has gone from sadness and mild depression to whatever else, and it's just not a good state of mind for me to do good work, especially in the realm of putting together videos. So I do apologize again. I do want to deal with some comments because that's kind of what I do on Friday, but I'm going to end with a few of them. I don't know. The one that's kind of on my mind is this one from the Free Bird of Reason. Some of the other ones, talk about other things, but I did have my opening salvo on Monday, and Free Bird of Reason talks about Trump holding up the Bible, and he said he felt sick. He had an obvious that he had an agenda for what he's holding it up like he's a moral saint and trying to reconvert, I agree with that. I mean, other comments about that video were, evangelicals care more about power than what Trump does, which is KCA Randy, thank you for that comment, because there's a lot of truth to that. The evangelicals will be around long after Trump is gone. And I think that's something that people fail to recognize, that, the evangelicals have been around for decades, and they continue to have their power, and they continue to do what they want to do. My problem with the whole photo op was this, from a political standpoint, was they asked the crowd to move. The crowd said no. And so then Trump sends in the troops. Now, my problem with that is, instead of accepting their no answer, he escalated it. And he didn't need to do that. He didn't need the photo op. He didn't need all that stuff. But he went out and got it anyway. And this is the kind of thing that you have to do to play religious BS. So that's kind of, where it is with me. When I look at this stuff, when people flex their moral muscles, people ask me what sickens me the most sometimes about religion. It's how that even the quote-unquote most humble saint you'll ever meet seems to, have this arrogance about how their viewpoint of the world is better than everybody else's. Well, I'm just trying to spread, what I've learned, and acting like what you've learned is superior to anybody else's. And this is why religion in general seems to attract one of two types of people: the people that are completely destitute of any hope, and so something comes along and gives them hope, or they attract these people that like to be so cocksure of themselves, and then they come up to you and they pander to you. And to me, Trump was just pandering. It's as bad as Pelosi with her African stole around her neck kneeling. It's the right and left pandering to their voter base, which I think is becoming more and more obvious as people go along. But my issue with Trump is it kind of triggered me my understanding of how pompous people think they are in the name of humility. Oh, he's just a humble Christian holding up his Bible in front of a church. No, he's an arrogant cuss who couldn't take no for an answer when the crowd said they weren't going to move out of the way. And so he had them pepper sprayed and moved out of the way, which is unconstitutional. But also, he could have done his photo op somewhere else and not escalated the confrontation. He's the one that made the choice to escalate that confrontation, and he didn't need to. And that's kind of really what is going on there. And I just, I wanted to talk about that. A couple other things that have been happening in America, in case you've been hiding under a rock. The Supreme Court ruled that LGBTQ people have rights at a federal level. and that they're going to be protected class rights, which kind of ended some of what the Trump administration and some of the legislation that was coming through the legislative offices. It kind of just, all that stuff's just going to have to be scrapped because the Supreme Court has spoken. On the flip side, they did nothing about qualified immunity, which has been the topic of the day ever since George Floyd died. Why do cops get these special privileges that nobody else gets when it comes to how they can treat other people and their constitutional rights? And so there's a large movement in the United States called Defund the Police. I'm in agreement with Eric July on this, saying, it's not really defund the police. It's more doing a shell game with the money, taking the money away from the police and then appropriating it somewhere else, or changing the nature of how policing is done, and so on and so forth. I think that's kind of, what it's been done. It's not really defunding anything. It's just shell game with the government. I've had a lot of comments this week about, thank you for the videos. Freebird Reason, thank you for coming to the channel. You've been awesome. Your comments are right on board, and I do appreciate them. I don't always respond in a timely manner to some of the comments, but I'm a busy man. I don't know, probably some of the other comments that I've gotten this week on a lot of things is, that, of course, racial tensions are at a high again in the United States. You'd think we'd be over this after a few hundred years, but it's, it's still there. Somebody asked me what it's going to take to change the attitude of the United States, and I have had dialogue with several people, and one thing that comes up, and this is not wishing death on anybody, but we do need to keep activism in front of people so the issues are front and center, so that the next generation gets taught what is right, that, these things are wrong and we shouldn't do them. There's a few things from Black Lives Matter I, of course, disagree with, but there's no such thing as perfect agreement with any movement. I think sometimes I feel like I'm talking to cultic people, which is why I say that. When you try to debate certain statistics, they dismiss them. Well, that's irrelevant. No, it's completely irrelevant to the discussion at hand. And they have a tendency sometimes to overlook facts that would be advantageous to every human being, not just black human beings. So one of those issues often is qualified immunity. When I'm like, change qualified immunity, it helps everybody, not just black people, it helps everybody. And that's just true. That's just true. But also, somebody asked me, is there any biblical basis for racism? Oh, hell yeah. Starting right away, the Bible basically starts breaking down people into families and groups and starts to quantify them by race. How can you not have racism in a book that basically starts out with, Abraham, you are the father of my chosen people, and you're going to be my chosen people no matter what. And then you get to do whatever you want to do, and everybody else is just out of luck. And you see this rampant, these are evil people, the outgroups are evil, and eventually those people are allowed to kill each other. And if you kill people in the name of God, well, you're just a better group of people. So tribalism runs deep in the Bible, very deep. In fact, they talk about the 12 tribes of Israel, and they make a big deal out of the different people groups and how this group of people, the Israelites, were more righteous than the people they wiped out and killed and committed genocide on. Racism in the United States, as I pointed out in another video about slavery, which I'll link above my head, but the Bible was most definitely used in the United States by Southerners to justify their slavery and the kind of slavery they had. It was justified to do that before the United States became a nation by a lot of preachers. The basic notion that the Bible sets forward is, yes, you have slavery inside of Hebrews, and that's only for 7 years. It's more of an indentured servitude. What a lot of people that try to justify slavery on the Christian side of the aisle forget is that there's also a few verses of Scripture, in Leviticus, I think in particular, that basically say if you take slaves from outside of the Israelites, they're property and they can be traded to your kids. There is no hope of redemption, so on and so forth. That was kind of the idea, and that goes to a racist tie too, because you end up with, okay, one group of people is so special that they can escape slavery if, you know, they serve every 7 years, they get set free, but if they serve and pay off their debt, they get set free too. And there's really strict rules on that when you look at how the Israelites dealt with slavery within their own tribe. But outside the tribe, nope. So, you know, just, you know, when people say, you know, there was no justification for the kind of slavery, well, what happens then is, of course, you get the one group of people, the white people in this country, essentially, and before that, before this country became a country, saying we're the Christians, we're the heritors of Israelites. Black people are the sons of Canaan or whatever, and therefore they're outside the camp, so we can take them as slaves and keep them slaves forever. It's that kind of logical thinking that is directly derived from the Bible. Sorry, it's just true. So yes, the Bible has been used to justify slavery, and it's hard to use it actually to justify complete universal emancipation, because even Jesus, you know, kind of hints, you know, slaves, you know, be obedient. And it's certainly the way Paul ran with things, and Peter as well. If you take those as written by those individuals, I'm not sure some of it is, but all of them say slaves obey your masters. Paul repeats this in several books. So it's not, he's not preaching emancipation of that kind of sort. So, yeah, you know, this comes up from time to time. I think I dealt with this in much greater depth in my video about slavery, which I linked earlier. So if you want to look at that, that's a little bit better. I think that's about it for comments that I want to deal with. It was nice to hear all the positive feedback. I do appreciate that. Thank you once again. And once again, welcome to my channel. You're free to like, dislike, subscribe, do what you want to do. You know, the only thing I don't tolerate is name calling the comments. If you engage somebody in a conversation, you're free to demonstrate that they're an idiot. You're just not allowed to call them an idiot. You have to use logic and reasoning. And I kind of, on my opening salvos, I'm going to try to deal with logical fallacies one at a time. First thing I talk about is not defining your terms. You need to define your terms. That way everybody knows what we're arguing about. Now, sometimes you can assume because you've had long conversations before, but you can't always do that. But that's kind of where I'm going with that. You know, once again, thank you for coming by the channel. And hopefully someday I can convince you to be a rabid atheist like myself. In the meantime, this is Rabyd, the Rabid Atheist, wishing you a good day and have a great Father's Day weekend.